Well, today we have another amazing guest for you, Executive Vice President of HeartMath Institute, author, speaker, business executive, Howard Martin, who is one of the original leaders who helped Doc Childer found HeartMath. In 1999, he co-authored the HeartMath Solution, published by Harper San Francisco, and was a contributing author for Heart Intelligence, connecting with the heart's intuitive guidance for effective choices and solutions. In 2019, he produced the HeartMath Experience, a learning experience that has been featured in film festivals, found on Gaia, Amazon Video, Apple TV, and more. During his career with HeartMath, he has been instrumental in business development and in speaking and teaching HeartMath's practical yet dynamic programs to thousands of participants worldwide in over 75 cities on 4 continents. He is a member of the Transformational Leadership Council, an exclusive organization made up of well-known authors and acknowledged leaders in the field of personal and organizational development. And he is a member of Evolutionary Leaders, an organization founded by Deepak Chopra, comprised of many of the world's most respected visionary leaders. Now, before I go, I would like to leave you with a quote from Doc Childer and Howard Martin. The doorway to fulfillment is in your heart. When you use your heart intelligence to shift perception and direct the flow of your emotions, you have the ability to generate and magnetize your own fulfillment. The longing stops and is replaced by appreciation. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this interview. Enjoy. Well, today I am super excited. We've got Howard Martin from the HeartMath Institute, and I'm super excited and really can't wait to get into this conversation. So welcome to the show.
Catherine, thanks so much for having me. And let me say hello to everybody listening wherever you are around the world. I don't know how many of your followers are from Australia, but it's a country I've visited many times, had wonderful experiences there through the years, and it's been too long since I've been back.
Yeah, no. So what part of Australia did you visit?
Let's see. I've been to Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney, Gold Coast, Byron Bay. Covered a lot of them. Haven't been to Adelaide, haven't been to Perth, haven't been to Darwin, but I've covered a lot of the rest of the cities.
You have. You've done the rounds. That's amazing. Beautiful. And you've been to some beautiful places in Australia too. Excellent. So let's get started. And I thought the way we could get started, Howard, is probably to start with the basics. What exactly is heart resonance or heart coherence?
Yeah, I think heart coherence is a key cornerstone of the work we've done here at HeartMath. Let me just say that coherence in general means order. You know, it means something that's in sync. A coherent conversation is a conversation that's synchronized. Throughout nature and throughout a lot of the aspects of the world, coherence is demonstrated in a very organic kind of way, right? So in a coherent state, you know, we are more efficient. Less energy is being wasted. You know, it's a much more direct and aware consciousness associated with the concept of coherence in general. Many years ago here at HeartMath, when we were doing our first research on trying to understand what the heart was doing physically that we didn't know, right? And we found, of course, that it was communicating. It's communicating a very vital and important message to the brain and the rest of the body. And we began to try to quantify that. And we found out that there was an optimal state of that heart-brain-body communication, which was called heart coherence. And what we mean by that from a scientific or physiological perspective is a state where all the body's major biological systems are synchronized to the ordered rhythmic beating pattern of the heart. That would be things like digestion, respiration, immune system response, hormonal response, brain function, all of that is synced. So it's highly efficient. It's all working together in a very organized way. And it's a very healthy, high performance state. We also found that what triggered coherence was the experience of a sustained, regenerative, uplifting emotion. And they are, interestingly enough, Catherine, emotions long associated with the word heart. It would be like love, care, compassion, appreciation, kindness, non-judgment. Those type of heart qualities engender this heart coherent state. So what's the big deal? Well, When we're in a heart coherent state, a lot of things are happening inside the body, as I said a few seconds ago, that relate to physical health, improvements in our physiology. It's a healthy, high performance state. The signals that go from the heart back to the brain in a heart coherent state open up higher perceptual centers in the brain. So we become smarter, we become more aware. From a spiritual context, I would say this: when we're in a heart coherent state, that's when we are open to and more receptive from that larger self that we have, the more dimensional self, the bigger self beyond the personality, begins to integrate more with our humanness in the heart coherent state. So it is a very measurable physiological state that has a lot to do with our emotions and has a lot to do with spiritual aspects of who we are as human beings.
I love the way that you've just described that. And I'm just thinking from I guess, from a day to day basis, how does one get to that? Because I know that if you think about it, we are very much driven by whatever goes on from a day to day perspective. And sometimes our emotions are all over the place. How do we get to that state all the time, though? I know a consciousness must play a big part to be conscious and present all the time, but that's easier said than done.
That's true, Catherine, and it is difficult, especially in today's world. It's a fast-paced world. We're all faced with many challenges, personally, society, globally. It takes up a lot of our awareness, and we end up in places very often where we're not that coherent. You know, where we're sort of we're running with an unmanaged mind, and we're running from one thing to the next. We've lost focus. The day's running us instead of us running it, and we all experience this. Every single one of us, including me. So it's natural and normal in modern life, but we can learn to bring in more coherence into our day-to-day activities. And there are techniques, some of them are in the heart math system. There are techniques in other forms and systems that people use. We certainly at heart math got a whole suite of techniques that are used to engender this coherent state. We also even have technology that measures the coherence that we're in and also trains us to become more coherent naturally. We call that increasing our coherence baseline. This technology helps us do that. It trains us to do it and measures it. The technology is called the inner balance trainer, for example, that we have. But I think the most important way in which we bring coherence into our daily lives is a couple of things I'll say about it. First of all, it's making a conscious effort to actually experience some of those emotions that I just mentioned. Can we be more appreciative of the good things that we have in our life at any moment in time, rather than complaining about what's not going well, about what's not right? Can we offer a little more kindness or care or compassion, especially when we feel that there are people that don't deserve it? Can we extend that radius a little bit? Or just in general interactions with other human beings, can we just show a little respect, a little care, a little kindness? They all begin to create more of a coherent nature within us. And practice over time, that does begin to change us. It can be measured in changes in the physiology, but more importantly, it changes our awareness. We begin to think and we begin to feel differently. Now, to do that requires slowing down and pausing at different times in the day. We have to make a conscious effort to do that, to interrupt that rambling mind and all the busyness of our day. It doesn't take long to create a shift, but we have to pause first. We don't have to go off and meditate somewhere or take long walks in the woods or by the beach or someplace to do it. Who can do it driving in our car, in our offices, before an important phone conversation, before an interview with Catherine, I walked outside and just took a minute, said, okay, I'm going to talk to a lot of people right now, and I want to be the best Howard Martin I can be. So let's pause for right now. Let's forget about the meeting that just ended or the one that's coming up. Let's be here now for these people with Catherine in this interview. So there are times that we can do that. It becomes a matter of wanting to. It becomes a matter of sort of building a new habit to do that with. And HeartMath has simple techniques that help that. There are many, as I mentioned, techniques that we have, a whole suite of them. But some of them, and most of them actually, are designed to be used in the moment, to be used right in the midst of daily activity where it is actually needed the most. And there are others that are for specific things like decision making or communication or for a spiritual practice. A lot of our techniques are designed to let's bring more heart qualities into the moment. Let's increase our coherence, and let's use that to then navigate the game of life.
Yeah, I am aware of the shift and lift technique, which I've used quite a few times. And I think that's what I try to do is I over process or over analyze. I'm very much a mind person. And
Hmm.
so it does take a lot of practice for me to drop into my heart. And
Yeah.
I've been doing that, even just listening. When somebody's talking to me, I used to find myself having my own little conversation in my mind. And just from placing my hand on my heart and dropping to my heart, I feel like I'm listening with my heart rather than listening with my ears and eyes. But that takes a lot of consciousness. And like you said, we're all living in a very fast pace. Mind you, we have slowed down a little bit over the last couple of years. I think that's what COVID has taught me anyway, to be
Hmm.
really centered and a lot slower in pace. But it's one of those things that I know people get caught up in things. And I love the fact that you've got some techniques available, quick ones. I know everyone's always after a quick fix, aren't they, Howard?
What'd you say about a quick fix? I'm sorry.
Everybody wants a quick fix. Like they don't want
Yeah,
to
they
do
want a
the
quick
work.
fix. That's right. They want
Yeah.
something to do it for them, but I think in these times, though, one of the shifts that we have I think, recognize and acknowledge is that we're in a position now where we have to do it ourselves. There's not a lot on the outside that's going to really get us to that next level. It's an inside out job, but it's an opportunity. It's a great empowering position to be in.
And the benefits like from a self perspective, the benefits are massive from a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. It's massive. But even social, let's go and let's expand a little bit. When we are coherent, what does that do in our environment and the people around us as well?
To answer that question, I'd like to bring another subject in. It would be the energetic communication that the heart makes, you know, because that impacts, the field environment, so to speak, that we're in and beyond that, But so here's what we learned a long time ago, Catherine. We learned that the heart, of course, first of all, we already knew, and everybody in medicine knew, the heart is an electrical organ. It produces electricity. When we go to a physician and the physician does our electrocardiogram, what's the term even imply? Electro. They're measuring an electricity being produced by the beating physical heart. Now, what science didn't know is that electrical energy was producing a magnetic field that surrounds our bodies in 360 degrees. And actually, measured with the most conservative instrumentation that you can measure magnetic fields with, it can be easily detected about 1 meter outside the body. And so this field is surrounding us, it's extending, radiating outside the body, and it's encoded with what we're feeling. Magnetic fields can be and are often encoded with information. A great analogy I'll give you and the listeners right now is this: my cell phone. My cell phone is producing a magnetic field. I can imprint that magnetic field with whatever I want. It can be a picture, it can be a text, it can be a phone call, it can be a lot of things. It then sends that information to another magnetic field at a cell tower, which goes down. So when I get a text, my text is coming in, but it's coming from a magnetic field on someone else's phone being picked up in the magnetic field of my phone. Now, we're doing the same thing as human beings. We're encoding the magnetic field produced by the heart with our emotional state. When we're in a negative emotional state, let's just call it that, we're irritated, frustrated, angry, it produces an incoherent field. And guess what? We are broadcasting that. Conversely, the good news is when we're experiencing something different, let's say we're in a more appreciative or more caring mode, it also imprints that field and it becomes more coherent, more ordered, and we are radiating that as well. So there are, what, 8 billion of us now on planet Earth, all of us thinking and feeling all the time, and all producing a field. So we have this big collective field. It's a collective field of humanity, an energetic field produced by humanity. That field's working in consort, communicating with the fields produced by the earth, by nature, by animals, by the actual physical planet itself. All that's going on. We don't know it, we're not aware of it often, but it's happening. Now, social coherence implies more order amongst larger numbers of people. And that's an important part of the next unfoldment for humankind. And that's where a lot of the research that's done here focuses now on social coherence. What happens when you have a group of people, whether it can be a family or a school or a sports team or a company or a town, or a state, or whatever. When there's more coherence in that field, a lot of cool things happen. There's more cooperation, there's more understanding. It seems to open things up for more solutions to problems that sometimes don't seem to have solutions, but yet they do come. And so social coherence is an important part of what we have to begin to build more of as we move through this transitional time. The simplest way to say how to do that is something that our founder, Doc Childre is his name. We have a founder. He doesn't do public talks or anything like that, but he's the founder. And he actually says some things very profoundly, but very simply sometimes. And he said, the next key to human unfoldment is learning to get along. People have to learn to get along. To do that, we have to begin to drop some of the biases we have, certainly have to work on the judgments we have. We have to begin to look for ways to reduce separation and bring about more harmony. As we do that, social coherence emerges. Now, the more people that begin to do that, the easier it gets for everybody else. It just works that way. It multiplies that way. So a person or a small group of people can have a lot to do with creating or helping to create a more coherent state for others. And so if we take that responsibility, which I think someone like you does, Catherine, and probably many of the people who are listening to you, we take that to the next level, and we make conscious efforts all the time to ask ourselves, what are we actually feeding the field? What are we feeding it right now? Am I being kind enough? Am I being understanding enough? I like what you said about the shift and lift technique. You use it for communication. Are we really listening to someone? Are we listening to understand, or are we listening to respond? Has our minds slowed down enough to really take in what they're saying? Those little things, seemingly little things, are actually very important, and they produce more coherence in our field and more radiation through the heart's field that creates an environment that makes that kind of behavior a little more prevalent, and certainly easier for people to make that kind of a shift within themselves. So it's a big deal to me, social coherence. It's the next step in human evolution.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those things that I always say, that if you're not happy with your results or your environment, I always say, look within, because, we are constantly projecting into our environment. And so if we're not happy with the results of our environment, we need to shift the way that we are seeing it, the way that we are thinking, the way that we are feeling. And but what I still get a little bit of resistance. People still feel that that's probably too much accountability, let's call it.
Yeah.
They'd rather blame their environment and rather than own the results. So I think that, I love the way that you describe it, but that also takes a shift in, I think, when we're talking about, I agree with you about the way I see it is we are one. And so when we're judging by self. And I
Right.
feel that there's been a lot of separation over the last couple of years. And I think, and this is why I was so excited about you coming on the show, how do we turn things around? How do we start being more kind? And, I have a daily practice of gratitude. I always share that when we start shifting our consciousness into being grateful for what we have, we stop looking for what we don't have. So what would be some things that you would like to share with us, how we start shifting that mindset a little bit, so we're more, we work with the collective?
Well, let me say this, Catherine. All that I just said sounds really good, but there's a practical side to it of the things you have to actually do. And that's where it gets tough. It's like, how often, I ask myself, and I'll ask everyone listening, how often are you sitting at home, you're watching the news at night, and you see these things going on about politics or something, and you immediately go into judgment about how stupid they are, how you can't believe this and all that. You may not be saying it, but you're feeling it on the inside, and everybody listening right now is probably saying, yeah, but that's okay because those people are, right? Well, that's where we're drawing the line, is when do we get to a more neutral place with that? We don't have to agree with let's use politics. We don't have to agree with what various political groups and people and elected officials are doing or not. I'm not saying we have to agree with it, not saying we have to endorse it, but I'm saying we can get to a place where we're not quite as judgmental about it, where we're not hammering on these things so much.
Yeah, so I don't know the way that I verbalized what you just described is staying in my center.
So staying in my center, and that could be staying in your heart center, not buying into the stories and the narratives external. I don't watch the news anyway, because I'm really conscious about what I feel, my consciousness. But I think that it's also about that non-judgment is a big practice, but it is a practice in itself, so that we can become more coherent and loving and kind.
Well, we're living in a polarized world, highly polarized world right now. So that makes it tougher. Polarization is a major aspect of the planet and the world and the consciousness that we're in right now. At the same time, it's not all that way. Social coherence is actually on the rise. I know it doesn't look like it. We got wars going on. We got separation going on. We have all kinds of inequities that are happening all over the planet. I get it. And I have a lot of compassion for that. And I pay attention to all of that. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that want more harmony. They're coming together. They're seeking connection. They are moving into new consciousness within themselves. They are not as judgmental as they say used to be. They are making an effort to put more love and care out to other people as they go through life. That's happening at the same time, and it's happening all over the planet. So it isn't that it's all that way and all that polarized. There are people making serious efforts to reduce separation and to go to another level of acceptance of other people and situations and all of that. There's many lines I can give you, like, one I heard one time is that, about how we judge people and all that. The line is this: everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. I mean, they got something going on. They got problems in their own life, and we know nothing about that. Yet we can easily judge them. Yet we know nothing about what's in the background, what they may be challenged with. So examples of that. So I used a term a while ago called neutral. Neutral sounds boring, but it's not. It's actually a highly aware state that's not deciding anything. It's observing from a neutral place. It's not assigning a lot of emotion to the situation or the observation. It's not taking any particular action at that time. It's simply just being in neutral. It's a paused kind of a state, highly aware state to be in that place. And it's hard to do because the mind wants to jump right in and say, well, I know this and I know that, and it's that way, and I can see it that way, and I'm right because I know I'm right. And all that stuff is going on and churning in the mind. That's when we have to make an effort to shift to our own best friend, where we can get the advice we need, which is our heart. In time, sometimes things do become more clear. And it doesn't mean, again, that we're accepting of everything. That would be idealistic. In business, I can have a neutral attitude towards a business deal that's being proposed, and I can also be doing an assessment of whether that's the right deal or not, or whether these people are people that I want to be in business with. And that's okay. But it doesn't mean I have to think that they're wrong or bad. I'm just saying maybe this isn't right for us. Maybe this is not the kind of crowd I want to hang out with. That's a clean assessment coming more from the heart than from the unmanaged mind. This is jumping in there with my know what I knows, about everything. So all this stuff takes practice. Yes. What do we do? Well, it's first of all, you want it. You say, look, I want a more harmonious world. I want my world to be more harmonious. I'm willing to do a little to try to get a lot. And it becomes a matter of wanting to make changes, wanting to heal the separations you may have with someone else, with the judgments you may be having that are ongoing and habitual in a way. And that would mean judging the same things the same way all the time. No matter what, the judgment's going to override whatever you do. So it starts with wanting it. And then heart math, again, is a system of tools, techniques, and technology that helps with all that. But let me say this: there are many systems out there that are helping. So this isn't about having to do heart math to get there. This is about finding something that works for you, finding something that makes sense, that can give you a little of that feeling inside, of a more heart connected feeling, connecting with, you call it your center. Well, if you look at spiritual writings, if you look at things like the chakra system, for example, which center is in the middle?
Yeah, the heart,
The heart.
the bridge.
One in the middle, three above, three below, right? And so that's your center right there. So connect with your center, connect with your heart, and let that be the guidance system that you use for how you navigate through these things. The last thing I'll say about this particular subject is, as you do it, there's going to be times when you feel better about what you've done than other times. There are going to be times when your behavior does not meet your intention or your expectation. And you'll at times go through the feeling of you can't get it, or that you're a failure, or that you're not good enough. That's part of the game too. So whenever that stuff shows up and you realize, I went into this meeting or went into this conversation saying I really wasn't going to judge them, and I came out of there mad as hell, well, that's a time when the self-judgment kicks in. So when you find yourself in situations like that, the first step to take is to try to have some compassion for yourself. Self-compassion. Recognize you're a good person. You're doing the best you can. You're doing it in an often challenging environment. You're doing it at a time in history when there's more change happening and more in less time than ever before. Give yourself a little break there. Come back to your own center. Find that place inside yourself where self-compassion lives and experience some of that. That'll help shift back into the next steps and the next steps. And then who knows, maybe next week in the same conversation, it doesn't go that way. It can be that kind of an approach, I think. But self-compassion as we go through this together is an important aspect of it all.
It is, isn't it? And it's, sometimes it's when I think, because I do a lot of inner critic work and shadow work, and sometimes that's a lot of effort. I know some of my clients go, "Oh, Catherine, I'm just tired of having to be conscious about having to work on this." And I always say, be kind to yourself, because eventually it'll become a habit. But if at first, it's like when you first go to the gym, right? You've got to work out your muscle and you don't really see a result. But then over time, it becomes natural. It would become natural for you, Howard, right? Over time, because you've practiced it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not the same person I was many years ago. I think I've improved. I think I'm a better person than I used to be. And it's like, what happens is the appetite changes. I'm using that term, like this emotional appetite, it just feels so much better not to be judging. That you eventually, it's not a discipline anymore. It's not a big work process. It flows a bit more. And then you'll find that you're just less judgmental in the first place. Then when they do show up, it's a whole lot easier just to sort of neutralize them and move on. But it's an appetite change. And it's not hard because that's in the air right now, so to speak. I mean, it's like that's the momentum. That's really the momentum that's happening in the world today. It's a momentum moving towards that type of consciousness. So you're just sort of catching the wave and finding the flow with all that. And it gets easier as you go. And then again, as I said, there'll be days when it doesn't feel easy, but there'll be plenty of days where it feels a lot easier than it used to.
Yeah. I like the way that you described as well, that there are a lot of, even though there seems to be a lot of havoc in the world, the dichotomy of that, there's also, I hear a lot of communities get coming together and collectively are starting to create new things. There's a lot of I know in Australia, I'm sure all over the world, there's a lot of people that have left corporations and have really become a lot more simple about life, loving life. Are you having the same in California?
Yeah, of course. I think there's many hundreds of millions of people around the world that are doing exactly those kind of things. They're just leaving their jobs, but they're changing themselves. They're changing themselves in a different way. And many have, and they're making great contributions already. So the social coherence movement, so to speak, has been happening and is happening. It's not like it's something that I'm talking about that's going to happen. It's going to increase, but it's already happening. It's already going on, and the changes like that are in play. Sure, we all magnetize or draw to us more of the things that are more resonant with us and ourselves. But before COVID, when I was doing what I did normally, I was a 100,000-mile-a-year flyer, and that took me to a lot of places in the world as a speaker and author and those type of roles. And I saw it constantly, and I saw it in all different kinds of people. And they weren't necessarily people that had gone through the same overt spiritual practices that many people had gone through. They weren't necessarily meditators. They weren't necessarily into all that stuff. They didn't even know who Deepak Chopra or something was. Never heard of him, but yet they were manifesting those qualities in how they lived their life and how they were treating each other and how they were treating me and all those things, and I saw that constantly all over the planet, regardless of culture and even regardless of age. So I kept seeing it over and over again. And I finally figured out that there's hundreds of millions of people on this planet that are playing this game, and it was great to understand that, because if you look at the problems that we have, that can be overwhelming. One of the things that I do find in people today is a sense of hopelessness. They don't feel like it's going to get better. They feel like it's getting worse. They have, thoughts of an apocalyptic nature that's happening, and they don't see any hope for humanity or for themselves or for a better world. That's a hopeless feeling that they have, but that hopelessness is even being born from them actually seeing and wanting something else, seeing the possibility of something else and wanting that. And when they don't see it manifesting as fast as they want, it's easy to slide into those feelings that I talked about, more of a hopeless feeling. But the impetus for it all is still wanting something different. So as more and more people want something different will happen.
100%. And you were talking about with the I guess the social coherence, even like global coherence. What are your thoughts around or your research around coherence with the solar flares, the increase of solar flares? Because that's all I'm hearing at the moment.
Okay. Well, okay. So I mentioned earlier we produce a field, and I alluded very briefly, people may have missed it, that that our field is interfacing with other larger fields, the fields of nature and the fields, I actually said, of the Earth itself, right? So let me go back to that. The Earth, our planet, the physical Earth, produces magnetic fields. One of those is called the geomagnetic field, which is created by the spinning of the iron core at the center of the Earth. And there's another one that works closely in consort with that field called the ionosphere. And those two fields provide a protective layer around our planet. They protect us from solar radiation, solar flares, cosmic rays, what I can generically call space weather. If those fields didn't exist, nothing that would look like life to us would be here, be a rock. So the fields play an important role in our world, and you can consider them maybe like energetic ecology. Now, those fields are constantly changing, and they change because of a number of things. We're not sure of all the reasons why, but we do know that changes in solar radiation impact the geomagnetic field, for example. We also know, not we HeartMath, but science in general knows that changes in the magnetic fields impact human health and behavior. Our nervous system is like an antenna that's picking these things up. There are frequencies produced by the human heart and brain that match some of exactly the same frequencies in the ionosphere, for example. So there's an energetic coupling between us as human beings and these fields. So as the fields change, we go through some changes ourselves. And when a solar flare happens, that's creating more energy, more stimulation in the field. That's being transmitted to our fields, and therefore there can be an impact on how we think and how we feel. Now, a lot of people feel a bit more irritated or that sort of an emotional state when there's been a solar flare, and that's real. At the same time, I'm going back now to the beginning of our conversation, Catherine, self-responsibility and a time of our own empowerment on that. We can learn to find a place within ourselves where that stuff has less impact. I can't excuse my behavior because there was a solar flare. I can't say to my wife, look, I'm upset and irritated right now, but you got to understand there's a solar flare. She's going to go, yeah, great. When you get over it, and let's come on back to the heart, not going to work. So solar flares, solar radiation, cosmic events of different kinds are impacting human health and behavior. There's a way to dance with all that. And it comes again from really focus on our heart's intelligence, using our own core, our own center to maintain a certain balance and poise in the middle of it all, and let the solar radiation and solar stuff do what it does, right? But I think there's a real impact, and I kind of just explained how. It's the energetic fields being impacted by the solar flares and the influence those energetic fields have on us, on our nervous system, on our heart and our brain functions, things like that.
It could be, obviously the environment plays a big part, and then it is up to us, because obviously cosmically there's an influence, and then it's up to us, what do we do with this influence? And we could look at it in it's the meaning. I always go, it's the meaning we give it. It could be, yes, I have been feeling a little bit anxious, I have been feeling frazzled, and then I look at Schumann's resonance, or I look at the solar flares, and I think, oh, okay, I can understand, maybe that gives me a little bit of peace, understanding that I'm not going cuckoo, real, that there's something out there happening. But then it's, what do I do with this energy? And like you said, you can dance with it. I love that. You can either allow it to work through you and say to yourself, I'm going through an upgrade, or I'm going through some form of healing or expansion, rather than I'm about to choke someone.
Right. That energy is actually neutral, like you just said. It's like, it's not out to get us. It's extra energy. It's what we do with it. So the day of a solar flare approach from the right way can be an acceleration in our consciousness, rather than a feeling of anxiousness that we can try to excuse because a solar flare is happening. So it becomes the same deal. So neutral energy. And but people aren't going crazy with all this going on. There's a lot of stuff like that that's happening, and it can make it difficult. So I do have understanding, and compassion for that, about what people are experiencing. But there's all kind of changes happening in the field environment that aren't solar flares, right? Let's say a major event takes place on the planet. It could be like the beginning of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Boy, that was a lot of wild energy going on that people were experiencing at that point in time. It was a major event happening, and we could feel it. People could feel it like a stress wave rippling across the planet, and so that's natural to be having the thoughts and feelings about it, and for it to have some impact. And then again, we can learn to sort of ride the waves of change with a bit more poise and a bit more grace as these things unfold, because there's all kinds of events that are going to continue to happen in the world as we go through these times. It won't last forever, but there's a time period where we've got to go through some stuff. It's got to balance out. COVID is a great example. COVID was extremely tough. A lot of people in it. A huge pattern interrupt and inconvenience. And then a lot of people found a deeper place within themselves as a result of it. So it's both sides of the coin, right?
Absolutely. And did you want to talk a little bit about the detectors? I know you monitor the Earth geomatic fields. So you've got little light detectors all over the world. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. By the way, there's two parts of Heart Math Institute. You introduced me as a part of that, and they're tied together. There's two organizations, one mission. Officially, I'm with Heart Math Incorporated. But we've all been together a really long time. It's just how structures unfolded, right? But on our nonprofit side, the Heart Math Institute is a nonprofit. There's one initiative that they've had for a long time that I'm on the steering committee member of. It's called the Global Coherence Initiative. And it's bringing people together from all around the world in heart-focused care and intention to help shift consciousness from all the separations and biases and things like that to more harmony and cooperation and enduring peace. Now, a lot of organizations are doing similar things. We're just doing playing a part in that and making our contribution. But we're scientifically based at Heart Math. Everything we do has got a scientific underpinning. So our scientists, working in consort with other scientists, have developed technology, very sensitive technology that can measure subtle changes happening in the Earth's energetic fields. So it's looking at the geomagnetic field, ionosphere, et cetera. And they have been deploying global coherence monitoring systems and sites at different places around the world. And there are 6 or 7 of them now in the various places. And all that information that those sites are taking in as they measure these fields is being sent back to the research labs here at our location in Northern California. And then data analysis is going on, looking at all the changes occurring in these fields. You can go to the heartmath.org website, click on the Global Coherence Initiative tab, and you can see some of the graphs and charts and reports in real time that are actually happening from the sensor sites that are located around the world. The purpose of doing this is threefold. One is we want to make an academic contribution to better understanding the fields. Yeah, a lot is known about them. There's a lot unknown about them. So we can make an academic contribution. The second reason is we're doing a lot of research on better understanding how the fields affect us. And that's important research. And we're finding some very interesting things in that research of global synchronization amongst people all around the planet when there is something like a solar flare or something where it's not just individual, it's collective. It's happening all over the place. And you can measure it in changes in heart rhythms and synchronization in heart rhythms and a lot of different ways we look at that. The third way is pretty cool. And it's a hypothesis. The definition of a hypothesis is, it's something you're looking at to see if the possibility is true. So you have to look at it very neutrally. You're looking at it to see is this true or is it not true, right? Hypothesis is that mass human emotion, whether positive or negative, is actually having a measurable impact on the Earth's energetic fields. So all the thoughts and feelings of our 8 billion are actually contributing to changes occurring in the field. And that can be because of all the negativity and all the anger and the frustration and the upset, or it can be when people come together, when things happen in a positive way. So we're looking at that. We're making correlations between major planetary events and what we see in the system. Nothing has been determined yet that would be anything that could be talked about or that I should talk about. It's rigorous science. As things begin to unfold, if there's reasonable proof of various things involved in this hypothesis, it would be published in research journals. And that's when it becomes official. But our belief is that, yeah, we're impacting these fields. We know the fields are impacting us. I'll use some just basic good old boy logic here and say, if they're talking to me, maybe I'm talking to them, that there's a two-way communication happening between me and those fields and between all of humanity in those fields. It's a two-way communication happening, not just the fields impacting us because we had a solar flare. It's two ways. So that's what the Global Coherence Initiative is about. So at HeartMath, we are trying to help people understand how to develop individual coherence within themselves, how to then expand that into their interactions and their social settings and their business settings so that more social coherence emerges. And as that accumulates, it builds and builds and builds until a baseline shift happens and we have a more globally coherent existence here. And that's our game. That's what we do.
That's amazing. And it must be so interesting and fascinating to look at the data and actually see that the shifts take place depending on the events that are taking place at the time.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. They keep me away from that stuff. I'll leave that to the real scientists. I'm a part of HeartMath and have been here since its inception. So I got a pretty good understanding of the science, but we have real scientists that do that sort of work. And so
That's
I've got plenty of
amazing.
other things to do besides look at that data and let them handle that. So, but yes, fascinating work in general. I think most importantly, though, I come back to some of my core and my roots and my mission in all this. It's not so much about the science. The science is absolutely fabulous to have. It's really about how do I help people find more of their connection to their own heart, to this magnificent part of themselves that can and does, offer comfort in the midst of chaos and confusion, a place inside ourselves that's intuitive. It's the birthplace of the emotional qualities that we want more of, the ones that are the most pleasurable, the ones that are most beneficial. How do I connect people to all of that? And the science is a way in which I do that. It's a bridge that creates understanding. At the end of the day, it's, simply stated, I've been doing this a long time, and it's over time things have gotten simpler, is that I believe the purpose of life is to love. That's why we're here. So how do I love more? How do I help other people love more? Comes down to that for me, and I use whatever tools that are available to me to help with that. And at the end of the day, it's going to be about how much did I love or how much did I not love. That's going to be the measuring stick of my life and whether I made a contribution or not, or what kind of contribution I made. So that's the game for me.
That's beautiful. And it is, a lot of us look external of ourselves for love, for happiness, when it's within us. It's about us spending that time with ourselves and allowing that spark to expand from within. So I love the way that you described that.
Well, I know time's getting short, but let me share another external quote. I usually don't do these things, but there's another one that when I saw it, I was watching a television show. It was a talent show. It's called America's Got Talent. I mean, you probably have Australia's Got Talent, down there. I was watching this show and this woman did say this one thing, and I thought, oh my God, what a powerful statement. Well, I've seen other people felt the same way. I've seen people referring to that statement many times now, and it was this. It was a young woman, beautiful young woman, who came and sang a beautiful song. And at the end, they said, is that your song? She said, yes, it's about me and about my life and what I'm going through. And the judges said, well, what are you going through? And she said, I have terminal cancer. And, my prognosis is that, I'm going to die really soon. And the judges, of course, were, And they said, well, it's so courageous for you to be up here and to do that and to sing that way. And she said, she said, you can't wait until life is okay until you decide to be happy. You can't wait until life is okay until you decide to be happy. And that's powerful. I mean, she's saying, I'm going to be happy no matter what. Life's not okay, but I've decided to be happy. And so I think there's a power in that message of like, whatever we have to go through individually during these times, collectively, societally, and globally. We're in this transition time, and there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. And so whatever we do, we have to recognize that you said it earlier, which is what triggered the comment from me, is that happiness is on the inside. And the best way I know to develop qualities like happiness and to be able to make peace with things and all of that is through the heart. The heart's intelligence is the key, from my experience, to any and all of that. And so the message to anyone listening to now is that learn to listen to and follow your heart. Know that there's an intelligence there. It's not sweet. It's not sentimental. It's not something that was just written about by the ancients. It's a powerful, magnificent intelligence that each and every person, including you, has. Learn how to make contact with that more and more. And there are tools and techniques that we have and others have that can help you with that. And then learn to listen and follow the intuitive guidance of the heart, because it truly is your own best friend. And it's the most reliable guide you'll ever have, to making the decisions you need to make, big or small.
Oh, that's so powerful. I got goosebumps. Thank you for sharing that. And it is true. Very, very true. Something's popped up as you were sharing that story. When you say let's invest time with the heart, what are your thoughts about, let's say somebody's gone through a lot of trauma in their life and they're still carrying that trauma in their heart? This is my way. You've got to feel it. You need to feel it to work through it, and not to just push it down and pretend to be happy that nothing is going on. What are your thoughts around that when people are feeling that heaviness in their heart, that trauma, that heavy emotional, vibrational thing that's going on? Are they to sit with it, work with it, or just not feed it and just feed that inner core happiness heart that you talk about?
Well, I'm going to leave that answer up to professionals like you and others that do that sort of work, really, to answer the question. I'll give you a belief about it all. It's like, first of all, my compassion to anyone who's going through that, especially someone listening to our conversation now. And that can be hard, and I understand. At the same time, the way through it is not to feed it all the time, not to try to figure it out, not to try to determine why and all of that. It's okay to explore that some. Emotions should not be repressed. I agree with that. But there's a place in consciousness now, in this new paradigm of consciousness that we're in, where you can move through things quicker, or where you can transform those type of feelings without repressing them and not having to revisit them all the time. And that takes some work, and it sometimes requires professional help. And I would suggest people that have that get whatever help you can get and need. But know that you can move past it quite faster than you may think. Those kind of feelings can be transformed now without the same logical, linear, step-by-step, climb the mountain till your feet are bleeding process. There's a faster way. You can begin to take the escalator, to the top of that mountain. And that, again, comes from accessing the new consciousness that's around, and those changes can be made. I've seen it happen in many, many people. And at the same time, it's not always going to be an overnight process. I'm not suggesting magic bullet. What I am suggesting is there's a newness available now that can help us with deep trauma and help us move beyond some of the limiting beliefs that we've had about that allow us to find the freedom within ourselves that has taken us to another place with it all, where it still may exist, but it doesn't exist with the same impact. We're sort of riding above that wave of negativity and that wave of old belief and experiencing life in a different way.
So, of course, I'm going to ask you the question, Howard, because I'm really curious now. I'm thinking acceptance, accept what is, not judge what is, as a way to move past it. But now I'm curious, and I'm sure our listeners are going to be curious. What is that thing that you speak about? How do we fast track it without having to go through it or repress it?
It's a transformative process that happens through the heart. The heart's intelligence, which is a combination of our intuition and the emotional qualities of the heart, and even the physiological communication that's going on between heart and brain and the rest of the body is your transformative power. It's got the ability to transform much quicker, to dissolve a lot of density around various things, to begin to reduce the significance of some of the issues that we have in our life. I've always felt that issues that I may have are not necessarily the really big problem. The really big problem is the amount of significance I'm assigning to them. How big a deal am I making of that? How much energy am I putting into that? The transformative power of our heart's intelligence can begin to slowly dissolve and reduce significance. I would suggest this to listeners right now. You can go to various things that HeartMath has, their books and things like that. There's one in particular, a book that I co-authored with our founder, Doc Childry, the HeartMath solution, which sort of people call it the book on HeartMath. It's been out for a long time, but it was really successful. So 20 some years later, HarperCollins is still printing it, you know, which is almost unheard of that a book lasts that long, but it does. In that book, there's a chapter on a technique called the cut-through technique, CUT-THRU. It's a technique designed to help dissolve some of these long-standing emotional issues, to begin to take out the density and all of that. That can be very helpful. Another suggestion of something that's free but can help people get on the move with these things. It doesn't have the cut-through technique in it, but it's got plenty of others. Go to the heartmath.com website, click on programs, and then click on the HeartMath experience. What that is a 9-chapter cinematic experiential course on HeartMath, and we don't charge for it. It's free. And it's something that I had a role in as the lead producer on it. It was a labor of love. It was magic creating this thing. You're learning. You're not just taking a boring course. You're learning, and it's pretty. You're seeing it cinematically. You're catching, there's an energy that comes with it that does that. And in there are 5 HeartMath techniques. And we don't charge for it. We started out charging for it. The pandemic came. Our founder, Doc Childry, said, we need to start giving something away to people because they're home right now and they need some help and they got nothing to do. So I want you to give the HeartMath experience away. We started doing that. We let some of our colleagues, other authors, speakers, organizations know about it. They thought it was a great idea. They let their people know about it. And really quickly, within a period of 2 or 3 months, we had hundreds of thousands of people that had downloaded the access key for that thing. So it's become huge. It's on Gaia. Gaia's down there. It's Gaia purchased the license for me for that thing. It's been shown in film festivals. All this stuff happened because we gave it away. And it's there for anyone who's on your show, right? Listening to your show. Go to heartmath.com, click on programs, click on the HeartMath experience, put in your email address, boom, you're in, and you've got 9 chapters with 5 HeartMath techniques that explains heart intelligence, explains the science, it gives you the techniques to practice. And I think it's beautiful. It's something that you will enjoy watching. And there's interviews in there with experts and a lot of things. That's my give tonight, to say that, that's there for you. And if you'll practice some of what you learn in those resources, you'll start getting onto ways in which you can begin to heal some of the deeper traumas in your life, some of the old hurts, the old pains that you want to get past, but are just hard. And that's the best thing I could say right now is a give that I can make to people that are listening. You don't have to be in trauma to benefit from these things. But if you are, there's some tools and resources there for you.
Thank you so very much. We'll have those in the show notes. So Howard, as we start wrapping up the show, we always love to ask our guest speakers if they would like to leave 3 shiny golden nuggets for our listeners, and they could be like 3 hot tips or 3 to-dos. What would be those 3 for you?
3 nuggets. So I'm on the spot now. Okay. First of all, recognize I've said this earlier, but I'm gonna give it as a nugget. Recognize you're a good person, that you're doing the very best you can in a world that can often be challenging at times. So please honor yourself for that and recognize the goodness that you have inside and have compassion for yourself at times. Number 2, recognize that you have a magnificent intelligence that exists and has existed your entire life and is within every single human being, and it's called your heart. And there's an intelligence associated with that. It isn't sweet. It isn't sentimental only. It isn't just those kind of things. It's high speed, it's intuitive, it's really intelligent, and it can help you move right along through the game of life. That's your second tip. The third tip is this. If you want to grow, the best way to do it is to learn to put out more of the qualities of the heart to other people, to demonstrate more care, more kindness, more tolerance, certainly more compassion, and then to appreciate and have gratitude for the gift of life itself. The more you do that with conscious intention, moment to moment, day to day, the faster you will grow. And that's your fast track to the new consciousness that's coming into the world that we have now. And those are my 3 nuggets.
Thank you so very much, and very powerful 3 shiny gold nuggets of that. Thank you so very much. We'll have all your the links in the show notes for our listeners, and also any social media links that will link you to Howard Martin. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing your love and your wisdom. And it's been quite uplifting for me, and I know our listeners are going to love this interview and reach out to you. So thank you so very much.
Well, let me give that back to you. Appreciate you a little bit, Catherine, for having a show like this. It takes time and energy for you to do this. People need to recognize that. And, it's a labor of love, I'm sure, but it does take organization. It does take doing it. It does take your time as well. It's much earlier in the morning for you right now than it is for me in Northern California. So you're up early in your day talking to this hillbilly with an expanded vocabulary and about heart. And, I appreciate you for that, for doing all that. So thanks for having me on your show, for thinking of me, and for inviting me. And in closing, in addition to thanking you, I want to thank everybody who listens to this, wherever you are in the world, whenever you listen to it. Thank you for your time and attention. And my sincere heart says that I hope that there have been some things said today that have been meaningful to you and that can help you have the life that you truly deserve.
Thank you so much. I felt that. I really felt that. So thank you so much for all your love and your wisdom, Howard. Thank you for your time and energy. Thank you.
Be well.